Alright, what's up guys? NinjaDeathStrike back with another episode of Exploring the Multiverse. I know it's been a while since I've posted one of these, but I've been busy and I didn't have a whole lot to talk about because I was using the same black-white mid-range deck. However, that deck has kind of fallen out of popularity probably because no one can figure out how to beat the red-green monsters deck with it, and yeah, not a lot of people are using it. I just kind of got bored with playing it. I do like it a lot, and I'd like to revisit it, but the last few weeks I've been playing a new deck, so today's episode I'm going to go over the deck, explain how it works, and give you a brief rundown of my last two tournaments with it. It's done very well. Have a combined record of 6-1 with it, so surprisingly good, especially since this is a homebrew. I didn't get the list from anywhere. I made it from scratch. And I haven't really seen a whole lot of other people playing these colors. It hasn't come up a lot in any of the big tournaments, but I think that they offer a lot. So we're going to go through, take a look at what the deck is and what it does, and yeah, see how it works. So the deck is Jund. Jund is the kind of shorthand name for red, green, and black together. It's from an old set where there were five different lands, and each land had three different colors, and Jund was these colors. So that's the name of it. But let's take a look at the cards here. The land base, we're playing three colors, so this deck does have kind of an expensive land base. Most of these lands that give you two colors are pretty pricey, and we are running 12 of the rare lands. We have four blood crypts, four overgrown tombs, and four stomping grounds. So right there, that's pretty expensive. But if you wanted to build it on the budget, you could use guild gates instead, and they wouldn't be too far off. There's not actually too many turns where you really want these guys to come in untapped. On top of that, I am playing 3 Rakdos guild gates and 3 Temple of Abandons, just for some more diversity, because I need a lot of different colors of mana. But land base isn't that exciting, so we'll move on here to the creatures. And the idea behind this deck is basically it's a mid-range deck with some removal elements to help get you through mirror matches and other creature-based decks. And so what you want to do is on the early turns you want to play guys that make mana for you, and then you want to play big creatures and use those creatures to either make them bigger or use their abilities to clear your opponent's board. So we have access to 3 different colors. That gives us lots of choices of creatures, especially in green. Green generally has the best creatures in the game. But we'll start off with 2 Desecration Demons. This card is phenomenal. It's a 6/6 flyer for 4 mana, and its downside is actually really good because it can make them kill their creatures. So I'm only playing 2. 4 seems like a lot because there's some other guys I wanted to play, but 2's definitely good. If you get both of them out, it just really tilts the battle in your favor. And they only cost 4 mana, which is important. Some of these guys cost a little bit more, and you want to make sure you have enough early threats. This guy can come down as early as turn 3, which is good, because that's pretty much the absolute latest you can start dropping threats. If you're slower than that, you're going to get beat by the aggressive decks, like the mono blue deck and the mono red deck. And the red-white deck are all just going to be too fast, and by the time you get your big guys out, it's not going to matter, because you'll be dead. So we have 2 of him. 3 Ember Swallowers, which is kind of just a pet choice of mine. I like this card a lot. It's probably not the strongest card, but in the matches that it shines, it really shines. This card is phenomenal against any slower deck that doesn't ramp mana. Originally I had it in for the black-white matchup because it absolutely destroys that, and that's because of his ability. If you pay 7 mana, you can force your opponent to sacrifice 3 lands. You have to get rid of 3 of your own lands, but that's not as big a deal because you have a lot of other things that make mana. So against any mid-range deck that doesn't ramp mana, this thing just kills them. It will destroy their mana base, and then you will win the game. That's just how it works. I think I probably would go down to 2, and I might actually go down to 2, but I had 3 because a lot of people in my area were playing black-white for a while. Now it's kind of shifted away, but it can still be good against control if you can get it early and get it monstrous early, you can really set them back because control decks, which are decks that are very slow, they like to kill your creatures, they like to just survive the early game, and then in the late game they have all these big spells that they play that just blow you out. And this can really set them back because to play those big spells they need 6 or 7 mana, and when they have to kill 3 of their lands, it's very hard to get to. So overall, a card I like a lot, but a card I wish was a little better, and I would probably say 2 is a better number than 3. So then we have 2. Oh, come on, don't do that. Show up for me. There we go. We have 2 Polychronos World Eater. This guy is just giant. He's a 5/5 for 4 mana, and he has the ability to get bigger and eat their guys. I only have 2 of him because he is a little situational, like the Ember Swallower. He's not always great, but in the matches he's good. He's really good. And the matches he is good in are going to be anything against red. Most of their guys are pretty small. Most of them have only 1 or 2 toughness. So his ability to get bigger and then eat their guys can actually just kill them. Like, can kill multiple of their guys. So he's pretty good in those matches. Against other big creature decks or against control, he's not going to do as much because there's no one for him to eat. So he's still okay because he's still giant, but he really shines against aggressive decks that want to play a bunch of little guys early because he comes down, sometimes again, he comes down on turn 3, he's a giant roadblock, and then the next turn he just eats a bunch of their guys, and that's it. So then we have 2 Scavenging Ooze. This card is a really, really good card, and it gains you life, it gets bigger over the course of the game, so it's never a dead draw, and also, very importantly, it comes down on 2, which is another key against the aggressive matchups, because it gives you a blocker early. Most of the creatures in this deck that are actually going to be attacking don't come down until 4 mana, so that's turn 3 or 4 sometimes, and this guy can come down on turn 2. You can pay 1 green to eat creatures in the graveyard, make him bigger, and gain you life, so he's very good against aggressive decks. And it's just a utility card. I wasn't playing him the first week, and I really miss not having him in the deck. So there's 2 in there now, and I definitely think 2 is the right number. You don't need more than that because you're not really aggressive, but he's just a great way to get you to the later turns of the game. And that's exactly what you want him to do. So next up we have 3 Stormbreath Dragons. I would consider maybe playing 4, but I don't have a 4th, so I'm just playing 3. The fact that a lot of people are playing Arbor Colossus right now means 3 is probably okay anyhow, because Arbor Colossus will kill this guy. Arbor Colossus is a big green guy. He's a 6/6, and he has reach, so he can block the flyer, and he can kill them flat out. So with his ability, so maybe even 2 or 3 would be okay in the deck. I might try it with 2 next week if I play this deck again. We'll have to see. But this card's really good. It's super good against control, unless they have black, and yeah, it's just a 4/4 flyer with haste, so it comes down, it kills someone the turn it comes down, and it can get bigger, it can turn into 7/7. Again, just a really good card. That's what this deck is. It's just really good cards. Really good creatures that are undercosted or stronger than their price, and it just gets them out and then wins with them. So then we have our mana base here. We have 4 Sylvan Chrysalids and 4 Zertaw Druids. Zertaw Druid is a card that's not seen a lot of play, and I'm surprised that it doesn't get played in the red-green decks, because I think it's better than Elvish Mystic, but a lot of the red-green decks are running Domri Raid, who's a Planeswalker that I'm not playing in this deck because I actually have a lot of cards that don't work well with him. So it's unfortunate that I can't play him, but it does kind of free me up to play some cards I wouldn't get to play otherwise, and Zertaw Druid is one of those cards. So he taps to make a green mana, and he taps when you tap him to make mana, he gets to deal damage to your opponent. So he kind of pings them, keeps their life low. He's really good. I like him a lot against mono black because the damage from him, as well as the damage from their underworld connections, adds up a lot quicker. He can be good again in other creature-based matches, and he's also decent against control because he's doing damage to them. So it kind of forces them to use their removal spells on him rather than one of your other guys. So I liked him a lot. I'm really happy, and I like having 4 of him in there. So let's move on to our removal package. We have a lot of it, which is something I like about adding the black. You get all kinds of removal, which can really help against the other creature-based decks, especially the straight red-green deck. I feel like this deck does pretty well against that deck, and that's because of the removal we have. We have 1 Abrupt Decay, basically just for value. It's 2 mana. It's always going to kill something. In aggro decks, it kills everything they have. In control matches, it will kill Detention Spheres. It also, in mono black, it gets rid of Nightveil Spectre. It gets rid of Pack Rat before they get a chance to make a bunch of them. It gets rid of Underworld Connections. In mono blue, it can get rid of some of the lower drops. It's not as good in mono blue, but it's still got targets. Again, Nightveil Spectre's in that deck, and it will kill him, but I don't have more than 1 in the main board just because it's kind of situational. Sometimes it doesn't do a whole lot, but it almost always has a target, so I figured it was worth 1. We're also playing a 1 of Golgari Charm. This is another card that I think is really undervalued right now, but is very strong, especially because there's a lot of decks playing enchantments right now. And Golgari Charm has 3 options, one of which is destroy an enchantment. So again, you can blow up Detention Spheres, you can blow up Debidance, any of the gods' weapons. You can get rid of Assemble the Legion if you're playing against that deck. It's just a really good utility card. On top of that, it can also regenerate all of your creatures. So against control, if they have Supreme Verdict, you can actually negate the Supreme Verdict essentially by regenerating all your guys. Against creature matches, you can organize some blowouts sometimes. With combat, if they are trying to trade, you can just kill their guys instead. So it's, again, a situational card, but it has enough uses where I think 1 of in the main board is warranted. Then 3 Heroes Downfalls, because it's an amazing card. It kills Planeswalkers, and it kills any creature. It's good. End of story. Again, Dreadbore does the same thing. It's cheaper, but it's at sorcery speed, so kind of a trade-off. But with Abrupt Decay, another thing, Abrupt Decay kills Dominant Raid, and it kills Ashiok. So, and Ajani as well. Although he hasn't been around a whole lot recently. So between Abrupt Decay, Hero's Downfall, and Dreadbore, we have 6 ways to deal with opposing Planeswalkers. Usually that's enough. Planeswalkers really aren't a problem for this deck, and I like that a lot because Planeswalkers are really strong right now. So just having 6 ways to kill them is really nice. Then we have 2 copies of Mizium Mortars. More spot removal, 4 damage, kills a lot of stuff, kills Blood Baron, kills all the Pack Rats if you overload it, so that's important against the mono black. And it'll kill anything, in mono red. Not that great against mono blue because of Master of Waves, but it can still get a few guys in that deck as well. It does kill Nightveil Spectre, which is relevant. And finally, we have 2 Rakdos Returns, which is not a removal spell, but is just an I'm going to win the game spell. Basically, it has 2 functions in this deck. If you don't know what it does, for 2 mana, and then as many mana as you want, however much extra you paid, it deals that much damage to your opponent, and it makes them discard that many cards. So this card basically has 2 functions. The first one is making your opponent discard their whole hand. You never want to play it unless it's going to make them discard their whole hand. So, in the mid-game, especially against decks that don't have an easy way to draw, or decks that don't have Underworld Connections out, you just make them discard their hand, and then you usually win after that. The second function is that it just wins the game. In the late game, you just tap out, and you deal your opponent 6 damage, and that's the end of the game. Done. So this is a really good card. It's usually going to stay in. It's not that great against aggro, but it is good against pretty much everything else, so I like it a lot. We also have 1 Dead Bridge Chant, which is another unique card that doesn't see a whole lot of play. It's essentially card advantage. It lets you draw an extra card per turn, and sometimes you just get a free creature. So I went with this over Underworld Connections in the main board because we do have a lot of land that's going to come into play and make you lose 2 life. And so I didn't want another way that you're losing life in the main board, because then you're really weak to aggro just because you're doing so much damage to yourself. So this one's slower, but it doesn't hurt you. That's why I went with it. And I've been... I don't know. It's done okay. Some matches it's been great. It's just gotten me free creatures, or it's gotten me removal spells back. Sometimes it just hits lands. There was one game where all it did was draw Xenagos after Xenagos had been Pithy Needled, so it's very up in the air, but it's just a cool card, and I wanted to use it in the deck, so I did. If you want Underworld Connections, go for that instead. And then finally, we have our 4 Planeswalkers, Xenagos the Reveler. He's pretty good. He's probably not as good as Domri Raid, but we're playing too many instants and sorceries to play Domri Raid. Domri Raid only wants you to play creatures, and we want to play other stuff. So we can't use Domri Raid. We're using Xenagos. He does put pressure on your opponents pretty well. He's able to make attackers because he makes a 2/2 with haste. If you're on the back foot, he can make blockers. He's just pretty good, and he can also ramp your mana if you need him to. Usually you're just going to be pumping out 2/2s, but sometimes you can get a big spell off by using his plus ability to make a bunch of mana and then monstrous, or summon a bunch of creatures or something like that. So he's pretty good. I think he'll be a lot better once Domri rotates out. But like I said, because we're playing so many removal spells, we can't play Domri, so we settle for this guy instead. So that's the main deck. Let's take a look at the sideboard. Basically, we're going to have a lot more removal so that we can kind of adjust the removal to fit the matchup. We have another Abrupt Decay to come in against the aggro decks. Then we have another Golgari Charm if they're using the enchantments. It's really good against mono blue or Esper. Esper is black, blue, white. It's very good against them because they have a lot of enchantments as well. And also the regeneration effect is good against Supreme Verdict. So we also have another Hero's Downfall. If they're playing more Planeswalkers, or if they're playing more expensive Planeswalkers, we can switch this out for Abrupt Decay. Another Mizium Mortars, that's for the mono black matchup. That gives us 3 ways to completely wipe out Pack Rat if they keep it in. Normally they don't, but it's good to have the option. 2 Pithy Needles. Pithy Needles just an amazing card right now. It's another way to deal with Planeswalkers. It deals with any Planeswalker, especially Domri Raid. This is a very important card in the red-green matchup because it deals with Domri Raid, and they don't normally have a way to destroy it. Also deals with Elsbeth, deals with Jace, any other Planeswalker. Or it can also take out Underworld Connections by naming Swamp, and it can take out Aetherling, which is a big deal, because Aetherling is one of the only ways that the control decks have to win. So, a really good card, and you're almost always going to bring it in, except against aggro. So, then we have Sire of Insanity, who is another tool to be used against control matches. You can read the card right here. At the beginning of each end step, each player discards his or her hand. Control is all about having answers for your stuff, and you can't have answers when you don't have a hand. So if you land this and it sticks, good game. Control. It's really good. Next we have Slaughter Games, which is a card I'm actually thinking about taking out. I think we have enough ways to deal with control without it. It is nice because it can't be countered, and basically you can just get rid of their only win condition. Control has very few ways to actually win the game. 3 at most. Sometimes only 2. So if you land one of these, you can basically remove their ability to win the game. That being said, it's very hard to find things to take out in order to put this in. So I'm not sure how I feel about it. I would almost rather have more creatures, I think. Um, so we'll see. Thoughtseize, see, again, another answer for control. I don't think we need Slaughter Games and Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize is just faster. I'm probably going to take these out, even though it's a cool card. Thoughtseize is another answer for control. It works against mono black as well because that deck is pretty slow, but I don't have it in the main board because, again, it's another thing that costs 2 life, and you're already losing a lot of life just because you have to pay 2 life to use your lands. So, come in against control, take apart their hand, win game. Underworld Connections, again, makes you lose life, didn't want it in the main board, but against slower decks that don't kill you as fast, it can be very good. Very, very good. And 2 Dead Bridge chance is a little excessive, so I split the difference, went 1 and 1. Finally, we have a Vraska the Unseen, who is mostly in there for creature matches. She can destroy creatures, which is very good. She comes in with 5 loyalty, so you can tick her down and still have her at 2, which means she has to be dealt with. She's very good against creatures. She's also surprisingly good against control, which I was not expecting. I brought her in on what I thought was kind of a blue aggressive deck, but it was actually turned out to be more of a control deck last weekend. And she did some work. She blew up all kinds of enchantments. Claustrophobia, she kills Claustrophobia. She kills Detention Spheres. She kills Bidence. Just lots of stuff that kind of sits on their side of the field that they use for devotion. So I'm glad that I decided to put her in there. So now let's talk a little bit about my last 2 weekend tournaments. I don't remember what happened at the one 2 weeks ago at all, except that I went 3-1 and ended up getting 4th, which was really disappointing because normally if you go 3-1, you are at least 2nd. But it was a really weird night. We had 4 people end up 3-1, and I was 4th. I do remember the reason I was 4th was because I lost my first round in a really disappointing showing against the red-green monsters. I think I mulled to 5 one game, and then I just didn't draw cards that I needed. So it was a really disappointing loss, and that basically set me off of winning anything. So, what are you going to do? But last weekend, I had a really good showing, and so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. It was only 3 rounds last weekend. We normally fluctuate between 4 rounds and 3 rounds, depending on how many people show up. Last weekend, we didn't have that many, so it was only 3 rounds. First round, what did I play against? First round, I played Mono Black Devotion. The guy that I was playing was pretty new, but his friend had given him his deck, and his deck was top tier. That is something I should mention, even though there aren't a lot of people that come to my local game shop. There are a lot of people who bring tier 1 decks. There's people who don't mess around. Usually they will have the best deck with the best cards. They don't make substitutions. They have the best deck. So even though I'm not playing a lot of people, I'm playing very good people. It's about half and half. Like half of them are really good, half of them not so much. So this guy was kind of in the middle. His roommate comes regularly and is very good, and so he's been teaching him how to play. So he's still learning, but he's starting to get the hang of it, and his deck was top tier. So round 1, Mono Black Devotion. Game 1, I mulled to 6, but I was able to win. He kept a 2-lane hand and then didn't get any more lands for a long time, and I believe I got him with Rakdos Returns. At some point, he didn't have... He got up to 3 lands. Then I got him with Rakdos Returns. He didn't have Underworld Connections on the field. And that was that. End the game. I just overwhelmed him after that. Game 2, I mulled to 6 again. And he just had a much better hand this time. The fact that he was on the play and I mulled to 6, it was just really hard to get any footing. I couldn't stick a threat. He had all kinds of removal, which is what black does. and eventually he just ran me out of threats. I think I got two. Well, I got Thoughtseize on turn one, and he took a dragon, and then I landed two Polukranos, but they both got killed. And after that, I just got overwhelmed by Nightveil Specters and Mutavaults. Just got beat down. So that was whatever. I mean, I was on the draw and I'm all to 6. So yeah. Game 3, I finally didn't have to mulligan. I had an awesome hand actually, and he kept 2-land hand again, but this time he did hit his lands. It didn't matter though because I had sided in Sire of Insanity, and I believe I got it down early, a turn early, and that was it. He still had like 5 cards in his hand when it came down, so he just had to discard his hand. He didn't have an answer for it when it came down. Ultimate Price can't kill it. Doomblade can't kill it. So he essentially has to have Hero's Downfall, and he didn't. And that was it. He discarded his hand. I had a 6/4, and he didn't have any creatures, so he died. So that was round 1. Round 2, I was against red-green monsters. The shop owner. Shop owner is very good. His deck is very good, and he's hard to play. So let's see. No, sorry, that was round 3. Round 2, I was against Esper Devotion. So that's blue, black, white. Focusing on blue Devotion, so he's playing things like Claustrophobia, Detention Sphere, Master of Waves. It's kind of a control deck that has more threats than the normal control deck. Luckily, I think my deck just beats that deck 9 times out of 10. I won 2-0. Game 1, I forget exactly what happened. I think, though, I played more threats than he had answers for, and that was that. He did get a Master of Waves down, but again, because I'm not playing straight red-green, I have ways to deal with it, and I just killed it because I could. And then game 2, I got to sideboard in all of my control stuff, although I thought I was playing the aggro version, so I didn't actually bring in a lot of my control answers. I brought in my aggro package, which isn't a whole lot because I'm good against aggro anyhow. But I did bring in Vraska. She was an all-star. Game 2, I landed Xenagos and Vraska, so I was making tokens, which forced him to use his removal, and I was blowing up his enchantments, which was a lot of his removal package, and so it just didn't last. He also mulled to 5 that game, so I had a big advantage that way. And he was never able to really present a threat. He was just trying to deal with my stuff the whole game. He actually got 2 Sphinx's Revelations off that game, and I still beat him just because he couldn't keep my guys down. At one point, he had Claustrophobia and Detention Sphere, and Vraska killed both of them, which freed up my dragon and my Polukranos, and that was that. So 2-0 that game fairly easily, and then game 3 was against the red-green monsters deck with the shop owner, and I was really nervous because last week I did terrible against that exact same deck. I know the deck is phenomenally good. It's probably the best deck at the shop, I think. And the guy's been playing for 10 years, so he's really good. And we just decided to split the pot before we played. So technically I went 2-0-1, but we played it out just to see how it went, and there actually turned out to be 3 really good matches. Game 1, I believe I won. I killed, I had removal for all of his early threats, and he didn't get a Domri, and I was just able to kill him with my creatures. He also, I believe he had a Ember Swallower, Polukranos, and maybe one other guy, an Arbor Colossus. But I just killed them, and after that, he couldn't get any significant threats. His deck is also a lot more aggressive. It plays things like Burning Tree Emissaries, so it has a lot of lower drops. It's also got Gorkland Rampagers, and they just don't stack up against my monsters. he needs his big guys to beat my big guys, and so once I killed his big guys, he couldn't get through. Game two, I don't remember exactly what happened. I know I lost. I believe I mulliganed again. I mulliganed a lot last week, and I think he just beat me down with burning trees and mutavaults. So happens sometimes. Then game three was a really good match. We both got Xenagos down, and so the board just got really clogged. But I was able to get a Pithing Needle so that he couldn't get Domri. And then I just, clogged the board until I could get Rakdos returns to finish him off. And that was the end of the match. So he did have, at one point, I think he had a 10-10 Scavenging Ooze, but I was able to just keep blocking it. My life total got pretty low at one point, but thanks to the tokens that Xenagos makes, I was able to just keep out of Gore-Clan Rampager range, because Gore-Clan Rampager, if you don't know what it does, it gives a guy +4/+4 for a single turn. So it's an easy way to sneak damage through and finish off your opponent. And I knew he had it, so I lived through that. I also lived through two Portent of Betrayals where he'd steal my guys for a turn. He did make a misplay. At one point he stole my demon, and I was able to sacrifice a token to tap the demon down, so it didn't get to attack. And then it's only for one turn, so it came back to me the next turn, and it was even bigger. And that game too was also the game that I got two demons down, and eventually they ate all his guys. He ran out of things to sacrifice. So really good match. Ended up winning 2-1 and went 3-0 on the night. So I've been pleasantly surprised with this deck. I've gone over it. I've talked for a long time now. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. If you want to try the deck out, go for it. I would recommend taking out Slaughter Games and probably an Ember Swallower. I'm going to do that right now, and you guys can do that too if you want. Thumbs up if you like the video. Please leave me comments. Let me know if you're playing, what decks you're using right now, what you like, and I'll have more coming your way shortly. Thanks for watching, guys.